Well, I certainly hope you all had a Merry Christmas yesterday, and I hope y'all got what you wanted instead of what you deserved. But anyway, just kidding. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year coming up, all that stuff. I hope you guys have enjoyed the holiday season with friends and family and all that. But we've had a bunch of bowl games already. The good bowl games really are starting this week, heading in, of course, to the weekend. College football playoffs on Friday, New Year's Eve. And then a bunch of games on Saturday, too, New Year's Day. And I haven't made a video yet about the Georgia-Michigan game, so I figured why not make one now. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do. Georgia versus Michigan this Friday. Was it 7:30 or 8? It's the second of the playoff games. The Alabama-Cincinnati comes on, I think, at 3:30. Michigan, Georgia, in the Orange Bowl in Miami comes on after that in prime time. I think this is going to be a good game. The biggest question really from the time the Alabama game ended for Georgia about this upcoming game has revolved around the quarterback situation. And look, I have spent an ungodly number of hours talking about Georgia's quarterback situation, not only this year, but last year, the year before, the year before, the year before, the year before. It's been a rinse and repeat situation. Stetson Bennett is the quarterback. I mean, this decision was made approximately 6 weeks ago. Stetson Bennett's the quarterback. I mean, I don't know what more people really need to see to understand that. And I'm not saying I agree with it. And if you've been following me for more than 5 minutes, you know how I feel about it. But, when you put JT Daniels in the second half against Georgia Tech, when you're up 40 points or whatever it is, and you don't even let him throw a pass, he doesn't throw a pass the week before against a terrible Charleston Southern team. Alabama game comes around. Stetson throws 2 interceptions in the second half. Second was a pick 6. You don't make a change then. Kirby has chosen Stetson Bennett for good, bad, or indifferent. That is what it is, and that's what you're going to have to ride with. And then I know, the news comes out about JT Daniels and, he tested positive for COVID. Even if Kirby was going to try to actually get his head out of his ass and maybe play JT Daniels against Michigan or whatever, or have an open competition even in practice between him and Stetson heading into the Michigan game, without JT being able to practice, any hope anyone might have had for that is out the window. So I don't even feel like we really need to waste any time talking about or wondering, oh my God, is Kirby going to make the switch? Is he going to go with JT Daniels? If you have to think no. You have to approach the game like it's going to be Stetson Bennett. And then if JT Daniels somehow gets in the game, you're just going to have to be surprised. I just feel like that's the only way to look at it. So Stetson Bennett versus Michigan. Stetson Bennett is not an elite quarterback. He's not a game-changing quarterback. He's not a top 5, top 10, probably even top 20 quarterback in all of college football. Can he beat Michigan? Yeah. I'm not saying he will. Can he, though? Yeah. Football comes down really to a couple of things, college football in particular, right? Talent, coaching, and matchups. Matchups in this game, Georgia versus Michigan is strength versus strength. Stetson is not a quarterback that is going to lead Georgia to a shootout win, like we would have needed against Alabama. Michigan, I don't think is really going to approach the game that way, though. I mean, I think Michigan is going to play this game the same way they've played all season. Michigan's going to line up and try to run the ball down Georgia's throat. And I don't blame Michigan for doing that. That's what got them here. I don't expect them to change. Not that Cade McNamara can't throw the ball. And, there's kind of a stat that when you tell people, it doesn't register with them. But Michigan leads the country in plays of 40 yards or more, or 50 yards or more, whatever it is. You don't look at Michigan and think that that's the kind of team they are. Now, a lot of those have been run plays by Hassan Haskins, who's an amazing running back. But this is going to be a game about matchups, right? You got Michigan's defense, which in my opinion, top to bottom, is probably a little bit better than Alabama's defense, I think. Alabama's got some great players on defense. There's no doubt about it. And they've got one of, if not the greatest defensive minds in the history of college football in Nick Saban. But if you look at just this year's teams, the stats definitely favor Michigan. Now, you can't go just off of stats because you're playing different schedules, right? So Alabama played their set of teams. Michigan played a totally different set of teams. So the stats aren't apples and apples. But over 13 games, things tend to average out, right? And Michigan leads Alabama in most defensive stats. Will Anderson for Alabama is an amazing player, one of the best outside rushers in all of college football. Michigan's got Hutchinson, right? And they got a guy on the other side, too. Michigan's got 2 elite edge rushers. Alabama had just the one. So I do think Michigan's defense overall is a little bit better. But when you look at the matchups, though, I think this is a matchup that Georgia has a better chance of winning with Stetson Bennett than when Georgia goes up against a team like Alabama or even an Ohio State, somebody that can really sling the ball around, right? And Michigan did a great job against Ohio State, shutting down that elite kind of air raid offense, right? 3 elite NFL wide receivers and Travion Henderson, probably the best freshman running back in football, and Michigan dominated that game. Hats off to them for that. Again, Michigan's got a great defense. Georgia offensively, though, and really defensively, is sort of built to stop teams like Michigan. Again, this isn't a prediction video. That'll come later in the week. I'm just talking about the matchups in this game here. There hasn't been a team that has successfully ran the ball on Georgia really in about 3 years. Alabama, I think, had 140 yards rushing or something in the game a couple of weeks ago, and that's one of the best rushing performances against Georgia we've seen in the last 3 years. Georgia's given up, I think, less than 5 rushing touchdowns total in the last 3 seasons. Georgia's defense, particularly the front 7, is elite and built to stop the kind of offense that Michigan runs. That doesn't, again, and I'll probably say this 100 times, that doesn't mean they will. I'm just talking about the matchups here. Georgia's defense and Kirby's defense is kind of built to stop a more traditional offense, which is what Michigan runs. For all the criticism of Stetson Bennett, Cade McNamara, who I do think is better than Stetson Bennett, especially at throwing the ball, he's not really an elite, game-changing, playmaking QB either. At least not yet. Now, this is his first year really as a starter, playing the whole season. And he's looked good at times, right? And he hasn't made the critical mistakes, generally speaking, that we've seen Stetson make from time to time. So he's probably a little bit better of a QB overall than Stetson Bennett. But no one would compare Cade McNamara to Bryce Young, right? The game that Bryce Young had against Georgia a couple of weeks ago is the type of game, in my opinion, a quarterback needs to have in order to beat a Georgia, particularly this year with the defense that Georgia has. And Georgia's defense has caught a lot of heat over the last couple of weeks for that Bama game. And look, I'll be the first to tell you, and I've been on here 100 times, I said it, the defense got torched. They looked horrible. They're out of position, wide open receivers. Got 0 sacks on Bryce Young, which is hard to understand. Bryce Young was the most sacked quarterback in the SEC. He'd been sacked 30-something times. Bryce Young had been sacked in every single game this season, except the Georgia game. Very weird, very hard to understand all the different things that went wrong defensively for Georgia in that game. But just like you look at the Alabama-Auburn game the week before, and Alabama's offense looked like it had never seen a football, right? I mean, they were terrible. They scored 3 points in regulation until the last drive of regulation when they finally scored a touchdown to tie things up at 10. I mean, their offense just looked absolutely horrible. They come out the following week and play the best defense in football and look unstoppable. So is Alabama's offense terrible because they played really bad against Auburn? Or did Alabama's offense have a bad game against Auburn? Well, they had a bad game against Auburn. And I think you have to say the same thing, I think, about Georgia's defense. Do you believe what you saw for 12 games about Georgia's defense, or do you believe what you saw in one game about Georgia's defense? And I expect Georgia's defense to play a lot more like we saw the first 12 games of the season when we play Michigan than I expect the defense to look like they did against Alabama when we play Michigan. I could be wrong, but I'll take what I saw 12 times over what I saw once. And if people say, well, that's the first time you played an elite quarterback. Right. And we're not playing an elite quarterback this week either. I'm not knocking Cade McNamara, but anybody with a working set of eyes and half a brain will tell you that Cade McNamara is no Bryce Young. And Michigan's got a couple of, they got some weapons on the outside. I'm not going to knock their receivers either. But they don't have a Jamison Williams. They don't have a Mechie. They don't. Those are 2 better receivers than anybody Michigan has. It's just a fact. I'm not knocking Michigan. Michigan clearly one of the best 4 teams and deserves to be in the playoffs. And to be honest with you, over the last month of the season, Michigan is the team of the 4 playoff teams. Michigan is the team that's been playing the best football. They're peaking at the right time. Alabama kind of limped through the month of November. They could have, Alabama easily could have lost 2 games just in November. They struggled through the month of November. Cincinnati, they pretty much were in cruise control the entire season except for the Notre Dame game. They played terrible in the first half in a lot of games. And again in November, a lot of close games at halftime that they won in the second half. Georgia, of course, coming off a blowout loss in the SEC title game to Alabama. Not Michigan. Since Michigan lost that close game to Michigan State, which Michigan should have won, Michigan was the better team in that game. They had, a 16-point lead in that game in the second half. They let it get away. Michigan was the better team. Michigan could easily be 13-0 right now, just like Cincinnati. Michigan has been playing the best football consistently over the last quarter of the season, heading into the playoffs. They're a really, really good team. And they can beat Georgia. There's no doubt about it. There is no doubt about it, because just like Georgia is kind of built to go against a Michigan, Michigan is kind of built to go against a Georgia, in my opinion. The differences, the main differences that I've seen this year between Georgia and Michigan have to do with what happened in each team's biggest game. Now, I guess you could make an argument that the Big Ten title game was Michigan's biggest game, but both Michigan and Georgia both, and their coaches, Jim Harbaugh and Kirby Smart, both had huge monkeys on their back entering the 2021 season. And it was another team in conference that has been consistently better over these two coaches' tenure, Harbaugh and Kirby. Alabama over Georgia, Saban over Kirby, and Ohio State over Michigan, Ryan Day and Urban Meyer before that over Jim Harbaugh. Michigan got that monkey off its back the last game of the regular season with not just a win over Ohio State, but a dominating win. A dominating win. And, you hear people say, well, Georgia's got a mental block against Alabama. They're so used to losing to them, they can't beat them. Well, Michigan had lost more games in a row to Ohio State than Georgia had lost in a row to Alabama, and Michigan didn't seem to have a problem mentally when they went up against Ohio State this year in a game that Michigan was not expected to win. Ohio State was favored in that game. Look at Georgia, on the other hand. They get another crack at Alabama this year in the SEC title game, and Georgia is favored. Not only favored by about a touchdown. Favored by about a touchdown. And lost. Not only lost convincingly, lost by 17, 41-24. Couldn't score in the second half. Multiple turnovers again in the second half. So that's the difference between these two teams. When you look at the numbers, Georgia offensively has been a little bit better over the course of the season, and Georgia defensively has been a little bit better over the course of the season. But again, they played two totally different schedules, right? So it's not an apples to apples comparison. You can't say that Georgia's defense is better than Michigan's just because Georgia gives up less points per game than Michigan. You can use that as a factor in trying to determine who you think the better defense is. And I'm going to be honest, I do think Georgia has the best defense in college football. But I think Michigan, well, whatever you think about Michigan, they're in the top 5 defensively, in my opinion, in all of college football. They've got a really, really good defense. I think they showed that against Ohio State. Michigan's better on the back end than Georgia is. Again, they showed that against Ohio State. I think Georgia has an advantage in the front 7. Michigan probably has an advantage in the secondary. The issue, I think, for Michigan in this game is going to be the ability to expose Georgia's weakness, which is the secondary. Alabama was the only team this year that found a way to do that. Every team tried to do that, because this has not been a secret about Georgia that, maybe the way to get to this defense is through the air, attack the secondary. One of the most inexperienced secondaries in the SEC heading into this season. Really our only guy with any experience at all was a transfer from Clemson, Darion Kendrick. Keely Ringo, the corner on the other side. This is his first year ever playing. He's a redshirt freshman. Injuries at the safety position caused, got people like Dan Jackson playing, who people, heading into this season, it wasn't expected that Dan Jackson would even see the field. And he's played 90% of the time now. So everyone knew that was the potential weak point in Georgia's defense, and people tried to exploit it. The problem was they didn't have the talent offensively to do it. Either they didn't have the offensive line to protect the quarterback, they didn't have the quarterback to make the throws, or they didn't have the wide receivers to make the catches. With a couple of examples, if you go back and watch Georgia versus South Carolina. Now, we dominated that game pretty much in all facets and assets of the game, like we did the majority of the games this year. But when that South Carolina quarterback had time to sit back there and throw, he was able to hit a really good wide receiver, Josh Vann, on the outside for several big plays. You go forward to the Tennessee game, same thing. Tennessee hit several big plays downfield when they were able to protect the quarterback, give him time to throw, give routes time to develop, and they were able to hit a couple of big plays downfield. And, of course, everyone saw what Alabama was able to do. The difference in the Georgia versus Alabama game and the Georgia versus Tennessee and Georgia versus South Carolina games was that Alabama was able to give Bryce Young time to throw the ball way more often than either of the other two teams, and Alabama, obviously, a lot more talented all around offensively than either South Carolina or Tennessee. And Georgia's, what was a perceived weakness for Georgia all season, the secondary, became a reality, became an actual weakness. The corners were not able to keep up with Alabama's elite outside receivers. The safeties got beat over the top multiple times. There was busted coverages and breakdowns in the secondary multiple times in all 4 quarters of the game. And that game quickly got away from Georgia. Georgia was outscored 24-0 in the second quarter of that game, and it was over at that point. You went 10-0 at the first quarter. Alabama scores 24 in the second quarter, while Georgia offensively goes 3 and out 3 times in a row, and it was over at that point. So when I look at this game, matchup-wise, Georgia versus Michigan, and I say, okay, can Michigan do what Alabama did to win the game? In my opinion, the answer is clearly no. I don't think you're going to see Cade McNamara throw the ball 45 times for 400 yards. I don't think that. I don't think Michigan thinks that either. I think Michigan thinks that they're going to line up and play the same type and same brand and same style of football that they played all year and beat Georgia that way. And they might. It will be the first time in a while that has happened, if that's what happens. It usually has taken a pretty good performance by a quarterback to beat Georgia. You look, we losing to LSU and Joe Burrow, losing to every Alabama team for the last 5 years with Bryce Young and Jalen Hurts and Tua and Mac Jones. We lost to all those QBs. Losing to Florida with Kyle Trask and all those great wide receivers and Kyle Pitts at tight end. Those have been the types of teams that have had success against Georgia in recent years. Michigan is not that type of team. But Michigan is probably the best run-first team, if you want to call them that Georgia has played in the last several years. Even, you look at Georgia's playoff run against Oklahoma. They ran the ball pretty good. They had a couple of pretty good running backs, but they had a Heisman caliber QB, right? And NFL wide receivers and tight ends and talent all over the offense. Now, defensively, they were a complete mess. I think Michigan thinks what Georgia thinks. I think Georgia thinks that they don't have to do anything different in this game than they did all 12 games of the regular season. And I think Michigan looks at this game and says the same thing. We don't have to do anything different either. We've got a great offensive line. We've got a great running back. We've got a quarterback that can get us in the right play, out of the wrong play. We've got a quarterback that can make the throw-off play action when we need him to. We've got a defense that can control the line of scrimmage and handle the other team's running game. I just feel like both of these teams are going to approach this game the exact same way. And for as much talk as there's been lately, by myself included, about how college football has gone to a quarterback first, throw first, you need to have a 4,000-yard QB, blah, 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 to be an elite level team. You got Georgia and Michigan both showing up in the playoffs this year, proving that that's not true. At least it's not true to have that in order to make the playoffs. Now, what's interesting to me with Georgia and Michigan being matched up in the first round is that one of these two kind of old school teams, at least in terms of offensive philosophy, is going to make the national title game. And other than Georgia in 2017, we haven't seen that. When you look at the national title games, really over the entire playoff era, it's been teams with elite QBs on both sides of the ball that love to sling the ball around, quarterbacks that have 3, 4, 5,000 total yards for the season and 40-plus touchdowns. Georgia in 2017 with Jake Fromm, Georgia now with Stetson Bennett, and Michigan now with Cade McNamara are really the three outliers when you look around the playoff teams going all the way back. I mean, Florida State and Jameis Winston made the playoffs in 2014, along with Oregon and what's his name that they had at QB. You look at all the years Ohio State has made the playoffs with the numbers their quarterbacks have put up over the years, every year that they get into the playoffs. Oklahoma, Clemson, right? Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence in the playoffs almost every year. Alabama, you don't even need to mention, you already know. Georgia and Michigan are kind of outlier teams. And you know, I have wondered out loud on video hundreds of times over the last few years, can you win a national title in today's college football with a game managing sort of just QB, right? With a quarterback that's not with a Stetson Bennett, with a Cade McNamara, with a Jake Fromm. I have wondered out loud, is it possible in today's college football, the old phrase, how defense wins championships? That hasn't been the case recently. That hasn't been the case. You look at these national title games, the winning team is scoring 40-something points almost every year. So this is a very interesting matchup to me. Michigan, it feels like, is kind of playing with house money. You know what, this year's Michigan, to me, feels like 2017 Georgia. And I wonder how Michigan fans, I remember how I felt in 2017. There is a difference. Your mindset as a fan heading into a season, right, I think determines how you feel about the season at the end of the season. Heading into 2017, there wasn't a soul on planet Earth, myself included, who expected Georgia to make the college football playoff. I mean, hell, that was Kirby's second year. The year before, his first year, we went 7-5 in the regular season, 8-5 after a bowl win. Nobody was expecting Georgia to make a playoff run in 2017. So when we won the rematch against Auburn and won the SEC title and made the playoffs, it's a feeling I can't describe, because it wasn't something I expected heading into the season. It wasn't even really something I expected halfway through the season. And Michigan fans have to be feeling kind of that same excitement right now, as opposed to Georgia fans like me this year, who heading into this season, I expected Georgia to be in the playoffs this year and be contending for a national title. And so it feels like all the pressure in this game is on Georgia and Kirby Smart, right? Georgia was expected to be here and expected to be in the next game too, the championship game. Michigan wasn't expected to even win their division. They weren't expected to beat Ohio State. They weren't expected to win 10 games. They weren't expected to win the Big Ten. They weren't expected to make the playoff, and here they are. And as a fan, that's a great feeling. That's a great feeling. You know, Alabama fans have it pretty good during the playoffs every year, 100 national titles. But you know what they don't have? They don't have the feeling that Michigan fans have right now. That unexpected excitement at the end of the year of being somewhere where you didn't expect to be. That's one feeling Alabama fans miss out on. Now, Alabama fans maybe had that feeling back in, 2009, 2010, 2011, when Nick Saban's run was first starting. But over the last 10 years, every single August, Alabama fans are, well, national title or bust. And I don't blame them. Because look at the track record. So enjoy this week, Michigan fans. Obviously, I'm a Georgia fan and I want Georgia to win. But enjoy this week, Michigan fans. I think this is going to be a good game. I hope it's going to be a good game. 11 of the 14, we've had 14 playoff games, 7 years in the playoffs. 11 of the 14 playoff games have been blowouts. This feels like it's going to be a close, competitive game, doesn't it? Doesn't this feel like a 27-24 type of game, one way or the other? It does to me. So plenty of trash talk later in the week, but I realized I hadn't made not a single video about my thoughts on the game in general, Georgia versus Michigan. So there you go. I've been very impressed with Michigan all year long. Their defense is the real deal. Hutchinson, one of, if not the best defensive players in all of football. Hassan Haskins, an absolute truck and just impossible to bring down. Cade McNamara has done what he's needed to do for the majority of the time. And I think it's going to be a great game. And with that, I'd like to get a hashtag 1980 in the chat if I can, and tell you to have a great day.